Ronaldo López is pain-free for the first time in years and also willing to go to the bullpen. It's a big deal. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Monday, September 15th. This is your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. Follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. This podcast is also part of the Believe Podcast Network and proudly presented to you by FanDuel. A lot of stuff to get to from the weekend. The fact that Atlanta still needs to add offense to this roster. We know they're going to focus on pitching and the rotation specifically over the winter, but they've got work to do on the offense. What we saw from the offense on Sunday was pretty nice, and that's an offense you could see Atlanta sticking with next season if that's what they got every day. But first, I want to talk about Reynaldo López. We had talked about him a little bit last week, and at the time, the understanding that we had from him, from comments from Alex Anthopoulos, was he wanted to stay in the rotation. And this was initially reported, if I remember right, the initial report was like Mark Bowman just kind of pulled him to the side and just chatted with him for a minute and then put that out on social media. So after Reynaldo López pitched a bullpen session, he got about 20 pitches in off of the mound on Friday, like during the day, he talked to the media and kind of discussed his plan. So we know what he's going to do going forward. And there was two big takeaways from that conversation. I think, right, so first, what he's going to do, the plan now is he's going to throw probably 5 more sessions off of the mound, like bullpen sessions, before he then faces live hitters. So he's going to head to Northport, to Atlanta's spring training site. Typically, like the minor league seasons are wrapping up. AA Columbus's last game was yesterday. Some guys will stick around and they'll put him through like an instructional league kind of thing. Guys who they want to get a little bit more experience, but not the guys they're sending to Arizona for the Arizona Fall League, which, by the way, if you're curious about that, I wrote that whole list up over at bravestoday.com last week. I think it was last Tuesday, a special bonus newsletter there, talking about the Arizona Fall League, who they're sending and why it's a big deal. Maybe I should make that a bonus show. If you want to hear that, leave a comment down below. I'll record a bonus show for you guys and drop that sometime in an afternoon, maybe for the Thursday off day or something. But Lopez is going to face, he's going to do 5 more bullpen sessions down there. He's going to face live batting practice, so face live hitters twice before he goes home for the offseason. And we've talked about this before, about Brian Snitker's kind of explained the goal for these guys is to be confident that they're healthy and fully recovered before they go home for the winter. So that way, one, mentally, they kind of get that ability to be confident knowing, hey, I'm fine. But 2, their off season is more like a normal off season of building, working on stuff versus just rehabbing and trying to get back, right? It's that peace of mind you can get from being able to perform, you know you're able to before you go home for the year. So no issues with that plan. That makes perfect sense. Atlanta left on a road trip. The Braves are headed, they're playing today in Washington. They've got 4 games in 3 days in Washington, an off day in Detroit. They play the Tigers over the weekend before they come home next week for the final homestand of the season. So I totally understand the concept of, we'll just go to Northport. We know guys are there. We'll just do that versus trying to, with the medical staff and everything, versus trying to travel with the team and all of that. But the 2 big takeaways on there, the first one I want to talk about is him being fully healthy. This is now the second guy that we have heard about who was dealing with some sort of lingering, recurring issue for multiple years before it finally got fixed. The first one was Sean Murphy, right? Sean Murphy was dealing with the hip injuries that had been bothering him for 3 years before he finally got it taken care of. And, had the surgery, is expected to be back, barring a setback in rehab, for spring training. Reynaldo López also said his shoulder felt better than it had in several years. The quote here, quote, "Throwing without pain it feels good. I've been feeling that, talking about the shoulder discomfort, for 4 or 5 years. It was getting worse. This year at spring training, that's when I felt it the most. Another situation like Murphy of this could have maybe been handled earlier had he said something. And the most common response that I got when I cut a little short video, I think on Saturday, but I put a short up on social media, on YouTube and all of that, was that a lot of guys in the league are dealing with stuff. And yeah, they are, especially pitchers. Pitcher Strider told me, I think it was spring training in 24, maybe, that they always don't feel good. They're always sore and not feeling well whenever they're pitching. Because pitching is just not a very natural thing for your arm to do. And it's really, honestly, it's just not good for you. So they're constantly feeling it. But I do think that this is another situation where a guy was feeling clearly something more than just minor discomfort. And it never really got fully taken care of. And it is okay to be frustrated that both of these guys tried to play through. I understand, right? These guys want, they live to play baseball. They don't want to voluntarily give up some of that time. The flip side of that is you have to wonder if they had been willing to say something earlier and maybe give up a little bit of time for some sort of, minor procedure, extended rehab, whatever, could it have prevented them from missing more time like they're going to? Sean Murphy's going to go through Thanksgiving, Christmas, about all of that stuff, rehabbing major surgery. He's going to be hampered his entire winter. Reynaldo López missed a year of his season in his prime for an issue that theoretically could have been taken care of before this. So, it's fair to both be frustrated and to understand why they did it. And I think that's kind of where I am now. Coming out of that, my hope is now that both of these guys have fixed the issues, right? Lopez, again, said it's the best he's been feeling in years. Murphy was able to perform with the hip issue early in seasons. And then as he got longer into the year, it bothered him more and more and more. Maybe we'll see that first half Sean Murphy a lot more. Remember 2023? He was an all-star in the first half and had a month where he started almost every day while Travis d'Arnaud was on the concussion IL, and he hit 300 in that stretch. He was one of the best hitters in baseball for a good solid month because it was still early enough in the year where his hip felt good. He was getting everyday play time. Maybe this resolves your DH stuff when it comes to Murphy surgery. Who knows? But it is okay, again, to be frustrated that it got to this. The other bit of news that we got from Reynaldo López is that he is open to the bullpen. His preference is still to be a starter. And I think Atlanta's preference is going to be him as a starter simply because of, one, the increase in his contract and how much they would be paying him were he to be in the bullpen. But two, the additional value that you get out of those innings from a starter. So kind of context here, 2025, Reynaldo López's contract is very small relative to a lot of other guys, right? His CBT hit, his luxury tax hit is $10 million. His actual cash is $8 million. And so that puts him tied for 7th on the roster. He's barely making more than Pierce Johnson. And he's barely making more than Ozzie Albies. Now, next year, it does get a little bit larger. He does have an escalator in there. It goes up to $14 million, which puts him actually, because of other pay raises, it kind of puts him around that same boat, right? Sean Murphy goes up to 15. If Ha-Sung Kim opts in, more on that later, it gets you to, he's at 16. Profar's at 15. It still kind of has him in the same range, but he's making a lot more than he was making this season. So from a value perspective, him being in the rotation means you get more bang for your buck. But he's also been a really good reliever at times in his career as a starter. His entire career, not just recently, 4.18 ERA and 8.1 strikeouts per 9 innings. As a reliever, 2.99 ERA and 9.7 strikeouts per 9 innings. There have been times when he's been in like 98th percentile for fastball velocity out of the pen, and is touching 100 miles an hour. That is a weapon that Atlanta has not really had in a long time. And there is a very realistic possibility of Atlanta being able to just replace the Raisel Iglesias deal at closer. Again, Raisel Iglesias is making $16 million to be the closer this year. They could just theoretically turn around and replace that with the $14 million of Reynaldo López. The biggest thing here is it gives Atlanta flexibility, right? You're not stuck having to fill a specific role in the market now. Okay. If Atlanta's able to get a good deal with a closer, then they could use the new closer and Joe Jimenez coming back to kind of shore up the pen a little bit, and they can spend their money. They can have Lopez in the rotation and have one or two whatever starters. Maybe they signed one big name guy and one like depth piece, maybe. And in that case, you're probably starting Hurston Waldrop and Bryce Elder both in AAA to start the year. Maybe they can't really find that second deal for a starter. They get one big name starter. You've got Lopez. Maybe they can easily get two guys. You put Lopez as there's a lot of flexibility here. And that's the biggest thing, because Alex Anthopoulos has shown a willingness to kind of go outside the box sometimes. And having this ace in your pocket of, I have a guy that I can start, I can put him in as my closing role, and he's gonna, we assume, be pretty good at both, gives you a lot of options here. I do think that it's important to have flexibility, to have some options, because Atlanta's offense on Sunday looked really good in their win against the Astros to avoid a series sweep, but there's definitely more work to do. We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Second segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. Let's break down the offense on Sunday. Rough weekend for Atlanta, right? They lose 2 out of 3. Just doesn't really necessarily look good. But they refused to get swept on Sunday by the Astros. And to me, this game, I think, perfectly illustrates when everything is working, how good the Atlanta Braves offense can be under the Tim Hires approach. Because if you kind of look at some of the stuff that they did, right? So Atlanta walks 6 times. They draw 6 walks. 5 of them earlier in the game. 1 of them is like the 9th inning. So of the 5 before the 9th inning, the Braves cashed in 4 of them, right? 3 of those walks were what knocked Framber Valdez out of the game. In the 5th inning, he opens up the inning with 3 consecutive walks of the top of the order. He walks Jurison Profar. He walks, I think it was Matt Olson and Ronald Acuna Jr. I think that was the order. Like, he walked the guys that you least want to give the ability to hit. He walks them. Ozzie Albies singles in 2 runs. Ha-Seong Kim singles in another run. And they pulled him from the game without recording out. But Atlanta cashed in all 3 of those. Another walk earlier. So they get runs there. They cash this in. They do a good job of taking advantage of those opportunities. They also hit multiple home runs. And it feels like there's been a lot of games this year where Atlanta does well, but they're doing it without the homers, right? They're stringing together. They might have a 3-run inning, but it's because they drew 2 walks and then strung together 3 or 4 base hits, right? It's not because they got the big hit. Now, the perk here is it does prolong that pitcher's outing, right? Instead of facing 3 batters to get the 3 runs, they're facing 6 or 7 batters to get the 3 runs. So that's the plus of this. But the downside is hitting's really, really hard in Major League Baseball, and the Braves still have plenty of holes in this lineup. And so they don't often do it, right? A lot of those times, what would happen is they would get into that situation and they would maybe get 1 run, right? There's been situations in the month of September, Atlanta had the bases loaded, no outs, and they finished with like 1 run. I think one of them was like a Michael Harris sac fly, and then there was a strikeout, and then like a weak ground out. They got 1 run with bases loaded, no outs. Like, not a noble tiger, but pretty gosh darn close. So being able to merge these two approaches, right? Seeing extra pitches, being able to draw walks, lengthen at-bats, lengthen the outings, get to bullpens earlier, like that, there is legitimacy to that. That is a useful approach to have. I will say it's a little bit suboptimal when you're so bad running the bases like Atlanta is. I talked about that briefly last week, but they were much better under Eric Young than they are now, and they're one of the worst base running teams in baseball. But the cost for Atlanta to get there is they really cut out the early at-bat aggressiveness. The 2023 Atlanta Braves hit 307 home runs. Of those 307, like it tied the major league, the single season record. Of those 307, 124 of them were on the first, or like were on either the first pitch, an 0-1 count, a 1-0 count. So within the first two pitches of the at-bat. You know, it represents like 0.5% of all of their pitches that they saw that season were home runs in the first two pitches of an at-bat. This year, that same situation, first two pitches of an at-bat, do the Braves hit a home run? They have 66. And yes, they've hit less home runs. They've hit a grand total of 167 home runs. But as a percentage of total pitches seen, it's 0.3%. So they're not quite half as good as they were doing it in 2023, but they're close. And I did a little bit of a kind of a deep dive on this last week on the newsletter. I think the article is called Atlanta's Offensive Approach Has Swung Too Far the Other Way. But this is the issue with this offense, is they're on average, they're not swinging as hard because they're trying to be more selective. They're trying to settle for getting balls into play when they need to and all that kind of stuff. So the swing speed's down kind of in general. But the places where it really, really shows up, it really shows up in the first two pitches of an at-bat, and it really shows up on middle pitches. And there's a lot of overlap there. A lot of get me over fastballs or get me over breaking balls and things like that end up being early in at-bats. It ends up being pitch one or pitch two of an at-bat, where that pitcher's just trying to either get ahead early or even up the count after they threw a first pitch ball. And Atlanta swings less in those situations under this version of the offense. They're less productive when they do swing. So Atlanta's barrel rate in 2023 on middle pitches, like attack zone 5, as down the middle as you can get, their barrel rate was 20.1%. This year, 12.8%. And the difference in bat speed from 2023, and it's the second half only, StatCast didn't add bat speed till the second half of the year. But the difference in 2023's bat speed on middle pitches when they were looking to hit homers, and 2025's bat speed on middle pitches, where they're looking to prolong the at-bat, get the ball in play, and make your defense make a play. The difference in bat speed is 74.9 miles an hour to 73.2 miles an hour. And that doesn't sound like a lot, I know. But one, the overall range of bat speed is not that significant. And let me contextualize this. 74.9 miles an hour, that bat speed would be 28th in baseball this year. Kyle Stowers of the Miami Marlins hit 25 homers in 117 games with an average bat speed of 74.9 miles an hour. Eric Wagaman of the Miami Marlins, he has a bat speed of 73.2 miles an hour, tied for 75th in baseball. He has 9 home runs in 128 games. I'm not saying you hit 3 times the number of homers if you swing a mile and a half harder. I'm just trying to give you some context on guys who have those swing speeds on average and what they do from a power perspective. Kyle Stowers was an all-star. Eric Wagaman may not be in the league in 2 years. Like, that's where these guys are. And it's kind of a microcosm of the whole issue, right? They just swung too far in the opposite direction. And Matt Olson, particularly this weekend, did a really good job of marrying those two approaches. He hit 2 home runs in the series, but picked up plenty of hits. His home run on Sunday was on the second pitch of the at-bat. It was a 1-0 pitch. He had taken an inside pitch for a ball. And then Framber Valdez, I think it was a sinker that stayed up a little bit. It was inside off the plate. But he just absolutely turned and unloaded on it. Launched one really high in the air, actually. It was the highest the longest hang time of any Braves home run this season, and it was the second highest launch angle of any home run in Major League Baseball this season. Like, he really kind of leaned back and turned on it and got it up into like the upper deck of the chop house, the second level of the chop house. And so Sunday's offense, I think, is kind of the platonic ideal of what you want from a Tim Hires offense. But one, they haven't necessarily had the full personnel for that, whether it's because of injuries, Ronald being gone, Riley's out right now, or ineffectiveness or suspension, right? Jurickson Profar was suspended. But Michael Harris, he did a lot of hits damage early in at-bats. He's really struggled with not swinging early. Then he gets into bad counts, and he already has chase problems. Now he's going to chase more. Ozzie Albies, similar situation. He's had more success in the second half. Some of that is due to the power coming back as he gets farther away from the wrist injury, but some of that's also him being more comfortable at taking those borderline pitches, working a walk, and then still being able and having the power to jump on a mistake. So seeing that kind of blend would be really nice. And I also think the Braves need to go out and get reinforcements for the offense. Corner outfield's the logical place to add somebody. The question is who. We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby, thank you for being here. Views and listens and everything have dropped off, both for this and the postcast, as we get farther away from, or closer to the end of the season, and it becomes more and more evident that the guys on the field, not all of them are necessarily trying right now. It feels like some of the teams kind of checked out at this point. We're still here. I'm still incredibly appreciative of all of you who show up in the chat every day on YouTube, who tweet at me, who send in questions, respond to the newsletters with your questions and your paid subscriptions. That's always nice. And just generally are buying in that we're still committed to figuring out how to fix the Atlanta Braves and get them back into the postseason. And looking at that, there's been a little bit of slumping from some significant Braves players, even guys who had been hot for a while. For instance, Michael Harris had like a 1 month stretch where he was like one of the best players in baseball, July 22nd through August 18th. So like the last couple games before the All-Star break is really when it started, but going to July 22nd through mid-August, he hit .426 with a .778 slug. He led baseball in average, slug, in OPS, and hits with 46, and triples with 3, and tied for the lead in extra base hits with 19. And we saw his batting average jumped like 50 points, like 205 to 259. But then since then, he's gotten cold again. Okay. His last 23 games, he's 11 for 86 through Sunday. He finished the homestand, the 9-game homestand, 2 for 31, had 2 RBI, both of them come on sacrifice flies. So he's back into that boat of one of the worst hitters by OPS in baseball. And so I've been advocating for a little bit now that with the DH spot open, going out and getting a starting caliber outfielder felt like the smartest thing you can do. And and my original reasoning for that was you were then able to take Jurickson Profar and Ronald Acuna Jr. and cycle them once a week through the DH spot to kind of give them like a half day. Hopefully head off any sort of injury issues by giving them a little bit of time off. You could even do like Snit has done a little bit here lately and give one of them a day off before or after an off day so they get 2 days essentially off their feet, right? And the idea was that guy, whoever that corner outfielder was, you could DH them a couple days a week. Drake Baldwin could DH a couple days a week. Like when Sean Murphy's behind the plate, Baldwin could DH. Let's say Baldwin started 3 games, Murphy started 3. You could give Baldwin 2 DH spots and 1 day off in a week. And then you could rotate these 3 outfielders through 2 spots in DH, right? You had the ability to do that. You could get that guy 3-4 days of playing time. And then as soon as somebody gets hurt, because somebody's always going to get hurt, as soon as somebody gets hurt, all of a sudden now you have everyday playing time for one of those outfielders, whether it be Profar gets hurt, Acuna gets hurt, or free agent / trade acquisition, whoever it is. But I'm starting to wonder if now what needs to happen is Atlanta needs to find a center fielder or a guy who can play center field. I don't think you're not going to find anybody one that's defensively good as Michael Harris. That's just not going to happen. But when you look how, other than 1 month, he's been one of the worst hitters in baseball, and yet he still got a ton of playing time from Brian Snitker, right? The first half of this year, Michael Harris hit .210 with a .551 OPS. Atlanta played 95 games. He played in 93 of those. He started 90 of those. It's very likely a new manager comes in and may not want to play him that much. If he's struggling that bad, like he was this year, rather than running him out there every day, they may not want to play him. And so you're going to need another outfielder. Now, some people believe Eli White could be that guy, right? You look at March and April, he had like 49 plate appearances. He hit .311, a couple home runs, a couple stolen bases. The defense, when he plays regularly, the offense looks good. The defense has been pretty good too. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's Jake Fraley, who went on the injured list with an oblique strain. He's not going to be back for the season ends. He just doesn't have time to get back. His season's over now. You have 2 weeks left in the season. I think if he spent the minimum on the IL, he could come back for the final series of the year. Maybe. That's it. So it might be Fraley, it might not. He's owed a couple $1 million in arbitration. Eli White could end up being their utility man. He's played first base a couple times. We've seen him play second base and shortstop in spring training. They haven't really used it in games other than a little bit at second base last year. So you might go out and look for a center fielder versus a corner outfielder in free agency. Now, the problem here is if you do that, and this is kind of the rule for any up the middle position, right? Catcher, shortstop, center field. It's very rare that these guys come open in free agency, and when they do, they're usually paid a lot of money. The center field class this year, pulling guys who are primarily center fielders, is both very small and very flawed, okay? You've got Cedric Mullins, who was traded from the Orioles to the Mets, has been very bad offensively for the Mets, was not good for the Orioles, but has been legitimately bad for the Mets. You've got Trent Grisham, who's had a career year offensively, but is not good defensively. He's probably at best going to be a center fielder for another year or two before he moves to a corner. He's also coming off the best year of his career. He's probably going to get more than you want to pay. There's a couple glove first guys like a Michael A. Taylor you could grab, but you've already got that at home in Eli White. Harrison Bader is hitting really, really well since being traded from the Twins to the Philadelphia Phillies. He's hit .352 going into Sunday's action with Philly since being traded. He's going to want a pretty big deal. He has a $10 million mutual option. Those are never picked up. He's not heading back to Philly, right? He's going to try to parlay this in a weak free agency market into a multi-year deal. Cody Bellinger has a player option for $25 million. He's really more of a corner outfielder than a center fielder at this point in his career, but he can play center field. I don't think they're going to spend the money on a guy like a Cody Bellinger. Again, he's going to be looking to beat $25 million because that's his player option for next year. Luis Robert, they're going to turn down the $20 million club option he has. I don't think that's going to go that well. He's probably a guy who's going to want a contract bigger than you're comfortable giving based on his past production. Remember, he's like been an MVP finalist in a previous season of his career when everything was working well. It just hasn't worked well in a while. Jarren Duran of the Red Sox has a club option for $8 million. They're almost certainly going to pick that up. Maybe there's a trade possibility there. We're not really talking about trade options here. We're just talking about free agents. There's just not a lot there in that market. Whereas if you decide, hey, I'm going to go with a left fielder or a right fielder, you've got a little bit more options. None of them are incredibly appealing, but maybe you go with Austin Hayes, mutual $12 million option with the Reds. They're not going to pick that up. Tyler O'Neill is probably not going to leave Baltimore. He has a $16.5 million contract for next year with an opt-out. He's not going to opt out. Lourdes Gurriel has a $13 million player option. He tore his ACL. He's probably going to pick that up and rehab on their dime. You're not going to pay for Kyle Schwarber. We all know that you're not. Don't even get excited about that. It's so hard to find offense, like a guy who's well-rounded enough offense, defense, and could even cover center field for you. Now, maybe they do something where, like Ramon Laureano, I would have loved to have him. They played him in center field a little bit. He's got a club option for $6.5 million. San Diego's absolutely picking that up. Maybe they go for a guy like a Lane Thomas on a buy low. He's played some center field. He's not looked great at it. He's better as a corner outfielder. He has a high slug season. I think off the top of my head, it was 2021 during the juiced ball year. Maybe he also hacked PitchCom like we all joke around that the Braves did. But maybe they grab a guy like that and they see if they can fix him. Oh, no, it was 2023. He hit there you go. The juice ball year. He hit 268 with 28 home runs in 2023. Outside of that season, his best batting average for a standard length season is a 241 average with 17 home runs. He was a juiced ball merchant in 2023. Maybe Atlanta grabs a guy like that and tries to fix them with the understanding of if Michael Harris goes down, right? And by goes down, I'm really talking about option down to Gwinnett, but I guess if he gets hurt as well, that's a thing. Eli White's going to be the guy you count on defensively in center field, but maybe you play somebody else out there. There's just not a lot of options. So adding offense somewhere. Maybe you go for a utility man who's played some center field. Willie Castro has made 6 appearances in center field. He's made 72 in the outfield. He's played everything but catcher and first base. Maybe something like that. Jorge Mateo, not career 222 hitter with the Orioles. He's blazing fast, more than 100 stolen bases. He's played 7 different positions. Maybe you grab a guy like him to be your utility guy and try to get a little more offense out of him. But if you're doing that, why not just go with Eli White, right? Why go spend money out there when you have a guy at home who can do that? Lots of moving parts here. But I think the big takeaway from the show is there's glimpses of what the offense could be. It's still not a finished product. You need to find more guys that fit in with what Tim Hires wants them to do and can meld the two approaches like Matt Olson has melded the two approaches. And the fact that Reynaldo López is willing to either be a reliever or a starter gives you the flexibility to, in essence, you may not have to spend dollars in free agency on all 3 aspects. Rotation, bullpen, offense, right? Maybe you can let Lopez be your bullpen addition combined with Joe Jimenez coming back and the guys that you have, and you can spend your money on the rotation and a hitter. We'll see. This has been Braves Today for Monday, September 15th. Do me a favor. If you're listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we drop the next episode. Going to try to get some bonus content in there this week if I'm able to swing it. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.